Hey, Shalom Akim, Shalom, Shalom, giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone for teaching us his truth, and salutations to the sincere Akim and Akwath and listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Raquai, and back in here with another quick and Lord's will is always an edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I want to go through this article that I came across, and basically it's surrounding that syringe that was given out a couple years ago, right? And it's basically it goes like this. It says a study of 1.7 million children find heart inflammation only in the group of people that took the syringe. I'll leave it like that, right? So you know what word I'm talking about, but for the sake of this video and sake for edification, I'm just gonna kind of keep it covert, right? So I want to read through this a bit and some of the Lord's will, this was edifying, right? So I came across this article yesterday. It was published in March 18th. So essentially they're finding a lot more studies and results of people who actually took this thing, right? So and then the results were very interesting. So I want to read through a bit of it, and Lord's will, as always, this lesson may be edifying, right? So here it says, this is evimagazine.com, right? And I'll put the link in the description, and it says here a large scale observational study conducted in England has found that all documented cases of myocarditis and pericarditis among children and adolescents occurred in recipients who received the C to the 1 to the 9, right, syringe, right? And no cases recorded among the people who did not take the C to the 1 to the 9 syringe, right? So I'll say it like that, right? So before I actually continue, let me just get a precept actually, because there's still information coming out, but it's not like the media is actually discussing this, right? Because this is they don't want people to have a buyer's remorse. They don't want an uproar, which there already are uproars, but you kind of keep the population distracted, right? So this is Luke chapter 8 verse 17. Yahushua said, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad." So essentially there's more information that's coming out in regards to the results of people who did not who did take this versus the people who did not take it, right? And here, so on the screen, I just wanted to actually go through this first off because it mentioned the word myocarditis. So I want to go to the etymology just to grab some understanding of what actually that is, right? So let me go to the etymology and actually kind of break this down, right? Then break apart the word, right? Because it's a very, very useful tool, to understand exactly what's going on within the heart, right? So this people who took the syringe is actually affecting their heart. So on the screen here, I have the different walls of what exists in the heart, right? So here you have on the outside, they have the cardium, you have the myocardium, you have the pericardial activity, you have the visceral cardium, pericardium, and parietal pericardium, right? So these are the different walls that exist in the heart. So it mentioned myocarditis. So let's understand what's going on. So myocarditis refers to what's being affected on the middle layer. So the myocardium is the thick layer, or the middle, and as well as the thickest layer of that exists in the heart, right? So myo refers to muscle. It's a prefix. Card goes back to the Greek cardia, which means heart, and then itis is inflammation. So something is swollen, something is it's reddening, it's burning, it's inflamed, right? So there's a swelling of the heart muscle, right? So just, brothers understand, these technical terms that are thrown around here, right? So let me go back to the article here. So it says the research published in Epidemiology and conducted using openly safe TPP database was approval from the NHS, which it just means National Health Service in England, right? It's pretty much the equivalent to Health Canada, and examined the safety and effectiveness of Pfizer's, syringe in young people following the national rollout back in 2021. And the study included adolescents between 12 and 15 years of age, as well as children, between 5 to 11 years old, with researchers matching people who had the syringe against people who did not have the syringe. So it says the results were shocking. Among the combined cohorts, approximately 1.7 million children and adolescents tracked across England. The researchers recorded myocarditis and pericarditis. So the peri is another what do you call it, layer of the heart, right? So there is an inflammation. When we go back to the word, there is an inflammation within these different walls of the heart, right? At rates of 27 cases per million following the first syringe, and 10 cases per 100 million after the second dose, with cardiac inflammatory conditions appearing solely within the people who have the syringe. So these people who had the syringe, were strongly they've noticed essentially these people having these conditions with those who actually had the syringe, right? So this is a tweet here, and it says approximately 1.7 million children have found to have myocarditis, and pericarditis only appeared in the children who have the C syringe. Not a single unsyringed child in the group suffered from had these problems. They did not have. So basically, the people who did not have these problems, did not have these health problems, right? They did not take the syringe. The people who had these health problems with their heart had these different problems. That's actually, let me Google this 1 second. So the pericardium is the inflammation, pericarditis is the inflammation of the pericardium, the sac surrounding the heart, often causing a sharp, stabbing chest pain, and that intensifies with deep breaths or lying down, or eases while sitting up, right? So these are some of the symptoms that are going on with people, who actually have this. So it says here, weakness, fatigue, trouble breathing, dry cough, palpitations, so it's often, the pain often is located behind the breastbone or in the left side of the chest, right? So, let me go to the Apocrypha real quick. Because a lot of our people trusted, his so-called science to actually, be healed, from, his so-called science, which really is, his science really just means knowledge, right? So basically it's deceitful knowledge, it's wicked knowledge, right? It's knowledge. It's not actually meant to actually heal you. It's actually meant to cause harm. When you watch a lot of these different commercials, it's very interesting. They always list off a bunch of different symptoms of this particular drug. But when you're looking at the commercial, it's always some kind of happy elderly couple, and they're running through daffodils in the field, and and then they're reading off the different symptoms of what actually occurs. It doesn't match the actual atmosphere of what's being communicated in the commercial. So this is Sirach chapter 19, verse 26, and it says, "There is a wicked man who hangeth down his head sadly, but inwardly is full of deceit, casting down his countenance and making as if he had heard not. And when he is not known, he will do thee a mischief before thou be aware." So essentially, Esau has been the individual that has been used to actually perform this mischief, and that counsel, has trickled down into the politicians in regards to actually how to, to get at our people, to get at their people in general, because they did not just affect our own people, but they affected the whole entire population, as a whole. So this is the crafty counsel, because this wasn't something that was actually well thought of to basically help the people. And this, when you look at Esau in terms of the lens of somebody who is a ruler, he's not somebody who is actually in the mindset of actually trying to help his subordinates, help his human resources, basically. This is the way he treats the people underneath him, right? That's why the scriptures say that when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn, right? Because here it is, in this society, he gives you these different weapons, drugs and so on and so forth to actually help you. As the scriptures say as well, he's a physician of no value. And a physician, really, when you really think about it, a physician is somebody who deals with healing, so you can get back to that proper estate of how your body's supposed to actually function. But there is no value, there's no resource, there's no type of there's only deceit that's under his tongue. That's the point I'm trying to make, because they made it really seem like it was actually for your benefit, but it's not. It was never for our benefit in the first place. It was really for our detriment, our downfall, right? And even a lot of our people got caught in the crossfire, not only through wicked leaders, but also through musicians and so on and so forth. That's why the scriptures say as well also that the leaders of the people caused you to err, because they understood and they utilized our people. Essentially, the more famous of our people, there was a rapper named Juvenile that they used to basically push out a campaign in thinking that to take this syringe was good for you, but it was actually the complete opposite. What these people are, the wicked of our people, they're basically hirelings. And a hireling is somebody who gets paid to do a particular job, right? So, they're a mercenary. I don't want to say a mercenary, but they're basically somebody who gets paid to actually watch over the care, of the sheep, right? But when the wolf comes, Esau, in this context, when the wolf comes, the sheep scatter, right? He doesn't actually guard and protect the sheep, right? He's not these people, the wicked of our people who know that they're Israelites, as well as celebrities, musicians, actors, sports players, and so on and so forth, that actually participated in campaigning, and trying to advocate, this syringe to the welfare of, at the expense of our people's health, for them to actually push this agenda upon our people. It's very, these people actually don't care, about you, right? They don't actually care about our people's welfare, right? Because they took essentially a consolation. They took money, whatever it was. They got some, 15 minutes of fame, and basically it has caused our people to, to perish, right? So there's a lot of judgment, that's falling upon, that will fall upon those types of people, right? I'll read verse 27 again. It says, "Casting down his countenance and making as if he heard, where he is not known, he will do thee a mischief, but before thou be aware, if for want of power he be hindered from sinning, yet when he findeth opportunity, he will do evil." So this is the type of person that he is. So he casts down his countenance, which is very interesting, because it kind of lets our people's guard down, it kind of lets them think that he's actually set up to actually help. But Esau has never been actually set up to help you. He's actually set up to punish you, right? You're supposed to watch him, right? You're supposed to watch him, like there's a threat. He's not somebody that you're supposed to just trust, right? And the scriptures say that, and part of knowing your identity is knowing, your enemies, right? And this is why, through apostles and elders on down, is to remind our people basically, your identity and knowing who the enemy is. And this is how your enemy fights. He comes at you from multiple different angles, right? It's warfare, because he doesn't essentially, as in Ezekiel, where it talks about the perpetual hatred, that perpetual hatred hasn't gone away just because you have a house or a 401k and a pension and so on and so forth. That those are gifts that destroy your heart. Our people have gotten a lot, soft, because they've forgotten the wicked tactics of Esau, right? And this was a very good example of that, of what occurred a couple of years ago. That's a wicked tactic against the people, right? Let me go back here and see if there was any, more. So basically, they found people who did not take it. They didn't find those people. They didn't find any people who had that heart problem, right? So and the myocardium is like this. It's like a very thick portion. It's a thick muscle portion of the heart, right? So that kind of explains when you see when you see these different cases of different athletes when they were performing certain drills or they were training and they were just dropping, falling down to the ground like fruit flies, basically, right? Now we have an understanding of why these things happen. And also I'll say this as well. We also have a strong appreciation, for actually making wisdom our habitation, because a lot of our people neglected the importance of having wisdom, and what the apostles and elders have been saying, right? This is oh, that's not Sirach, that's Wisdom of Solomon. Because the scriptures talk about, one of the things about wisdom, it essentially, it protects you, from these different situations, right? And that's what we need. The scriptures say wisdom is the principal thing, and it says here, this is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6, verse 13, and it says, she prevented them that desire her in making herself first known unto them. So this is speaking of wisdom and the importance of knowing wisdom and having wisdom and applying it, right? Whoso seeketh her early shall have no great travail, and that was a very, very great travail, right? But I'm sure other brothers can attest. There were situations where a lot of us lost our jobs and so on and so forth. But as at least you don't have to deal with that. The repercussions thereof of having that whatever substance that Frankenstein concoction inside of your body, right? Because the scriptures talk about how it's better to be poor, sound of constitution, to be a rich man that's afflicted in their bodies. And a lot of our people are being afflicted to this day, because they've taken it. Hearing family member stories, hearing some of the family, friends, and so on and so forth, some of the things that they they're trying to do, because our people are stupid because they have neglected the importance of wisdom, right? Let me see if there's any more. This is it's a bit of a long article, but that's pretty much, I'll read a little bit more. It says here, in September 2022, Evie Magazine reported on a nurse who claimed she was fired from Rady's Children's Hospital in San Diego after questioning why doctors reporting the pediatric myocarditis cases to VAERS, the federal, syringe adverse event reporting system. The nurse, who she said she worked in the cardiovascular intensive care unit, alleged that discussing the potential connection between the syringes and heart inflammation, cases she was seeing firsthand was an unspoken thing, and they were not allowed to talk about openly on the unit. At the same year, Evie wrote about a study showing how the syringe can result in much higher risk in cardiac arrest, in both men and women. And here it says 2 years later, in September 2024, the Evie magazine covered a resurfaced interview between Fauci and acknowledged the link between the syringe and myocarditis, stating, of course, there is a very, very well. That's what he was saying, right? So he's gonna, you have to expect the devil to deceive you and to lie to you, right? You know, he's not gonna. There's no truth in these people, right? And it says here, now the peer-reviewed data from 1.7 million children confirmed that all documented cases of myocarditis and pericarditis occurred exclusively among people who had the syringe, and those participants, parents who hesitated or refused the syringe, I'll say it like that, for their children may feel their caution was justified. So it says healthcare workers who raise concerns and face professional consequences may feel similarly vindicated, right? So that's pretty much the end of the article. I can just, what I'll do, let me see if I could just copy it, and then what I'll do is I'll just, add it to the link in the description, below for, brothers who want to see this, right? Let me see here. Right, so okay, I'll read to verse 16 here. So this is back in Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6 verse 15, and it says, to think before upon her is the perfection of wisdom, and whoso watcheth for her shall quickly be without care, right? And it says here, for she goeth and about seeking who are worthy of her, showeth herself favorably to them in the ways, and meeteth them in every thought, right? So we see that the people who, a lot of our people who, and there's a lot of celebrities too that actually know about, their heritage and know who they are, because of our apostles and elders and so on and so forth that have been out there for years, but they've essentially neglected, wisdom. So, in that sense, wisdom is not going to meet them, in those, times, in those moments, right? Because they didn't prioritize the importance of it, right? They don't see it as something, as a priority. They don't see it as essentially as a defense, and how much more, in times to come, right? So, that was, a very interesting experience, because it gives you like a foreshadowing of how things, how Esau wants to come down with his great wrath, but it shows you also the importance of having, wisdom as well. So I'll leave the lesson there, but Lord's will, this lesson was just quick and edifying. Just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashmal Shai. Until next time, I say Shalom.